Quite literally the worst series in franchise history.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets since the 2019 season, so I have seen series like this, or maybe not. This might be the worst I've ever seen because statistically, the worst series the Mets have ever played, but I have been covering this team for a long time. It's the only podcast that covers the New York Mets every single day of the regular season, no matter what. Although I did skip a game last night because, wow, is this series awful. And I was over with some friends, and I guess I have my own show playing on my phone there. That's what that was. But anyway, I had to skip the show last night because the loss was so bad. I'm hanging out with friends. I'm like, why am I going to stay up late, record an audio-only show, find a way to get it on YouTube, all that stuff, get into the Wi-Fi, and my friends said, like, why am I going to do all that for this team? I'm just going to see what happens, watch the game on Sunday. It can't be as bad as the game on Saturday. And then we'll recap the game on Sunday, recap the Saturday game, just go through it. What should I talk about from that game that we just watched? Honestly, like I don't even think it's worth it going through the fact that Frankie Montas gave up 4 runs in the first inning. Or was it 5 runs? I lost track because of that second home run. Was it 5? Was it 6? Who cares? It was 5 in the first, 1 in the second. I apologize. The fact that you had 2 runs from every single guy that pitched, and the last guy was Travis Jankowski out of the bullpen or out of the dugout. And Jankowski did the thing, is throwing 45 miles per hour. Just watching this prolonged agony. Like, you can't just throw up a white flag in baseball and say, okay, we're done. No. You got to throw Travis Jankowski out there to toss 45 miles per hour nowhere near the zone. And then luckily, a guy hits a hard ground ball and you get 2 outs. And the guy is mercilessly just running down to first, or slowly jogging down to first base, knowing that everyone just wants the game to be over. Seeing the people in the crowd, the Mets fans, and I had a lot of our Locked On Mets insiders that were sending me text messages. I'm going to be at the games this weekend. I'm thinking about all you guys who travel to Pittsburgh. And I'll tell you, I went and I made the trip in 2021. I was there when Jacob Stallings hit a walk-off grand slam. I was there when Taijuan Walker knocked the ball into foul territory. The Mets won that game, but I was there for it. I know what it feels like to travel to that beautiful ballpark. You see the skyline behind you. It's the most incredible. To this day, it's still my favorite ballpark I visited. And then you watch the Mets play truly terrible baseball game after game after game. And I'm sure some of you are going to be driving back listening to this thinking, I can't believe that was my weekend. And that's baseball. That's the crazy thing about this. Sure, we could talk about how this might be rock bottom for the New York Mets. We could talk about the fact that they just got outscored by the Pirates in a series 30-4. Then going into the series, I was talking about how the New York Mets were in a position where they could flush 2 weeks of the Braves just kicking their ass in 2 separate series, basically, until the Mets got to face a 20-year-old pitching prospect that they were able to handle. And then after they watched their teammate rupture his Achilles in Griffin Canning, they had a shutout from an incredible bullpen masterclass that carried them to a split against the Braves, and the Phillies get swept by the Astros, and all of a sudden, hey, the Mets are in first place, and if they handle business against one of the worst teams in baseball, they're going to be fine. But instead, you go into Pittsburgh, and we talk about all the offense, worst offense in the National League. What did they do? 9 runs, 12 runs. What did the Mets do? What was it? Was it 2-1-1? Who cares? Add it all up, it's 30 runs for the Pirates in a weekend, 4 runs for the New York Mets, and as they said at the end of the broadcast, the most lopsided series defeat in Mets history. Does this mean that the team is done? I'm sure a lot of you are thinking that right now. I don't truly believe that to be the case, but that was as embarrassing of a weekend of Mets baseball, and by the run differential, the most embarrassing weekend of Mets baseball in franchise history. What else is there to say about it? What else is there to say about the specific games and the scores and what happened? It was brutal. It was a brutal series. And I think the only positive you can take from a series this bad is it really does get to a point where, and maybe I should knock on some wood and try not to jinx anything here, but how could it get worse? I know the Brewers are a red hot team. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe if it was the Rockies coming into town this week to Citi Field, it could get worse because that's a worse team that the Mets could somehow play even worse and somehow get swept again. But really, this feels like the lowest point of the season. I could be wrong, but I don't know how it could get worse than what we just saw. And it's a June swoon, and guess what? That was the last game played in June because thankfully the New York Mets are off tomorrow. I think everybody can use a break. And I think the Mets did the players only meeting to try to stop the bleeding yesterday. Maybe they should have saved it. If I had to be a little nitpicky about Francisco Lindor and his captainship, that's a card you play out after you get swept. But, he had faith that Frankie Montas was going to go out there and pitch a good game and the Mets might be able to beat the Pirates, but it didn't happen. So everyone had the tough conversations yesterday. It's going to be a long flight home, or if they took a long bus ride home. And then you get a day off and they'll get a chance on a homestand to reset. And there's 2 weeks left for the Mets to play some good baseball before you get to the All-Star break. But this is a team that needs the All-Star break. This is a tired, beaten down, depleted Mets team that, was just trying to survive this series. They would have been better off just forfeiting once they sent Paul Blackburn out there. And by the way, since I didn't talk about it on our show yesterday, he really did show you why you never throw a pitcher back out there after an hour and a half delay. But that's the state of the Mets, that they thought that their best course of action in that situation was, throw Paul Blackburn back out there, see what happens. And what happens is the Mets get destroyed. And you know what? I'll even tell you, when I was still watching this game with the intent of doing a typical game recap, and I was still watching it with that type of a lens before it just got out of control, I thought, hey, maybe the Mets can get back in this because they're only down, 6-0 through 2. Maybe they can score some runs. I think where it lost for me in this game, actually, because I know the specific moment, Luis Torrens hits that home run in the 5th. And then I thought, honestly, third and the 4th inning, even the 2nd inning, Frankie Montas actually looked okay at the end of his start. I know a lot of you turned it off after the first, and I don't blame you. But he started to me, this start, while bad, I'm actually more concerned right now about David Peterson and his loss of command than I am on Frankie Montas on his second back start off of rehab having a bad inning, because that's really what this start was. But where the Mets really lost me today was when Torrens hits that solo homer in the 5th inning, and it's not Montas pitching in the bottom of the 5th, and it's Dickie Lovelady back, who's somehow no one picked him up, so the Mets just signed him. A new way around, not being able to have options for a player, just cut them and then sign them again, so then you can maybe cut them again. But when he gave up a home run to the first batter he saw, I was just like, all right, that's going to be about a wrap. But let's take a minute and regroup here. I'll be back in just a minute to talk about why this rock bottom could bring the Mets back into some better baseball, because I don't think this team is as far off as it looked when they were getting destroyed for a weekend against the Pittsburgh Pirates. We'll talk about some more Mets baseball here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help you feel fuller longer. And I love the no shells variety of Wonderful Pistachios. This is my favorite flavor, the smoky barbecue. I took this on the road with me for my little weekend trip. The best snack for me. But hey, if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch. They also have the in-shell options that are a classic favorite as well. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein providing all 9 essential amino acids. Get snackin' and get crackin' with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. So why is there hope for the New York Mets off of a weekend this bad? Here's the thing. When you are watching what we saw this weekend, when you saw in these games, for me, as I'm trying to find some type of an optimistic angle, you start focusing in on little things. Little things like the fact that Jeff McNeil is still playing good baseball, 2 for 4 game. Little things like a double from Brandon Nimmo or an at-bat. Here's one. Mark Vientos is at-bat. Let me find the specific one. And the funny part about this is I started feeling bad for Jeff McNeil because Jeff McNeil is first and third, and Jeff McNeil is standing on first, and Mark Vientos gets into this battle. Gets into a full count. So every single pitch, McNeil's got to be running. And here's Vientos wasting him. So it's a 10-pitch at-bat. Mark Vientos in the 4th inning. Now, he strikes out in this at-bat. So don't get it twisted. I'm not saying Mark Vientos is back because it was still a bad game. But when you see Vientos have an at-bat there where he was battling, he did hit some foul ball home runs. You're like, all right, if this guy gets another 10 at-bats under his belt, at some point, can it click really quickly? I think Mark Vientos is that type of a hitter. But that's what it's going to take for the New York Mets to really get back on track, is those guys who have that talent to stop just pressing. And I think one thing that happens, and it's the title of the show today, sucking can be contagious. And that is a fact. Anyone who's played baseball knows that when your team is down, it is so hard to be the one that makes the root team play. We saw Ronnie Mauricio boot a ground ball today at second base. And I'll tell you what, that reminded me when I played travel and I would play second base when I wasn't pitching. And when you have somebody getting rocked or, another couple teammates had made some mistakes and that ground ball is hit to you, you are so much tighter than you would be if your team was playing well. When your team plays well, everything's easy, everything's smooth, everything's flowing. We saw that for the first couple months for the Mets. But when things get tight for a ball club, it is just crippling across the board. And so, yes, it can produce some results like this weekend where the Mets gave up 16 hits to the Pirates today, and I don't even want to count how many they gave up over the weekend, where every guy that comes out of the bullpen is feeling that extra tension of, I can't make this any worse. We're already losing by 6. We can't be losing by 7. And then all of a sudden, you're losing by 8. It's just one of those things where it looks so much worse than it actually is. And I know saying that right now, when the Mets have lost whatever it's been, what is it? They've lost 15 of their last 18. I don't even know the exact numbers anymore. But when it's this bad, it seems like everything is insurmountable and a team can never snap out of it. But it really can turn on a dime. And it's little things like Mark Vientos, instead of yanking those 3 foul ball home runs, he puts one in the seats. And in that game that you were trailing 6-0, it's now 6-4. And then instead of Dickie Lovelady coming out of the bullpen, it's Daniel Nunez first. And instead of Nunez pitching in a, whatever it was when he came in, a 10-1 game, it's Nunez pitching in a 6-4 game. Maybe you see the Nunez who pitched after Canning went down that looked lights out for 2 innings. It's just things snowball in either direction. And when I look at this Mets team, I still see a 1-5 right now that is as good as pretty much any team in the National League, honestly. I really believe that when Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, and Jeff McNeil get going, this team has the foundation for a really good lineup. Now, the bottom 4 right now, it is a revolving door, and there's no one that is stepping up. And that's where just getting a Mark Vientos back to the way he was last year, huge. Getting Jesse Winker off the injured list and maybe providing a little spark, that can be huge. Because the 5 guys on top are great. It's just a matter of figuring out that bottom part of the lineup. And I'm seeing Brett Beatty at bats that I'm liking. I'm seeing Ronnie Mauricio definitely improving. Still, you'll see an error here, though. You'll see an ugly strikeout, but you see the talent that's there. So And once the other guys are going, once you aren't in a 4-0 hole every first inning, and I still think that the Mets have the pitchers in this rotation to not always be in that hole. Once you get to that point, then all of a sudden everything starts to be easier for everyone. And just like sucking can be contagious, good baseball is contagious. The hope is this is the rock bottom that the Mets needed. Maybe they weren't supposed to win 2 against the Braves, go into Pittsburgh, win a couple games ugly, and then maybe whatever needed to shift for this team doesn't actually happen because they didn't get to this low. That might bring them up to a much higher high in the future. Who knows? Or maybe this is the start of really bad baseball for the New York Mets too. That's certainly the case. It might be a bad season. You never really know until it plays out. And that's why we watch 162. Because the Mets can go against the Brewers, they could sweep the Brewers, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, different team. And if the Phillies aren't winning, the Mets are back in first place, and then everything settles down just like it did 72 hours ago. Or again, I was talking about the Mets. Oh, they're back in first place. They got Peterson on the mound. They're gonna go into Pittsburgh and do their thing. This team's horrible. The Mets are gonna go in there and handle business. Well, didn't happen. And now there's again an uncomfortable flight. Everyone has to sit on this for 36 hours until they get back on the field again. And then maybe when they do, all of a sudden the Mets actually start playing some good baseball. Or maybe this is a team that won't figure it out until the break. And then all of a sudden there's way more tough conversations that need to be had on how do you get back into a position to be buyers at the deadline. I think the Mets are going to be a team that's going to buy no matter what. And it's looking like a team that's going to need to buy a lot. I think the question is, where are they going to have to spend their prospect capital? Where on the roster are they going to have to make moves? Right now, you're watching them play this weekend. You're saying, all right, I think I get 3 bats, maybe 4 arms for the rotation, as long as they get Senga back, right? And then, then you need half a bullpen. But it's not that bad. It's not going to be that much of an overhaul that's going to be needed. It's going to be identifying the key parts in this roster, the key pieces that can plug in to the lineup, to the rotation, to the bullpen that can help stabilize this and help the other guys around them perform better. But I'm telling you, this is like bad news bear stuff. And I played on a bad news bear travel baseball team. And so I get the feeling when I watch Ronnie Mauricio, not see that ball into his glove and get out ahead of himself. I get back into like my 12-year-old body playing second base and remembering that feeling of, oh my gosh, I finally had a chance to get out of this inning. And now I'm still standing here with the shame of booting that ground ball. And the good thing about travel baseball is there was a mercy rule. And yeah, we definitely experienced the long end of that mercy rule more than we experienced the positive one. But that's just baseball. And it's literally as simple as it any game of baseball played, it's just going to happen that way. So when you lose and when things aren't going well, it can be as ugly as the ugliest it's ever been in franchise history. A 30-4 series loss. I mean, brutal. But baseball calendar marches on. And for the New York Mets, luckily it flips to July. One other thing. Imagine when Juan Soto and the Mets have a good month together. Can you imagine how good that's going to be? I'll tell you, from experiencing it all this season, I'll take the Mets being good and Juan Soto sucking. Like, I prefer that. I mean, I like for them both to be good at the same time, but if we can just flip those again, I'm cool with it. Juan Soto can have an OPS of 750, and we can hear from Yankees fans. I don't care if the Mets get back to pitching like the best team in baseball and winning games. But really, at some point this season, maybe July is the month, you would think that Juan Soto would keep being awesome and his teammates would be awesome at the same time. And the Mets might win a bunch of baseball games. So maybe that's something to look forward to. I'm going to sign off for today's edition of Locked On Mets. I appreciate all of you who tuned in live, you noble soldier of Mets fans that just are glutton for punishment. You just watched the Mets play 3 straight games and you can't get them out of your head. So you just tune on some more Mets content. And I appreciate you sincerely, because I just, like you guys, couldn't wait to get on the mic to talk about this game. Not even this game, just the state of Mets baseball, just because of how crazy that weekend was. But I'm not going to spin my wheels saying the same things over and over again. It was brutal. Hopefully, better times are ahead, and I will have a more well thought out show for tomorrow as far as giving you some more concrete things to look into. I still really do love Jeff McNeil in center field. I mean, that's a positive, right? We'll probably dive into the state of the rotation now, why the Mets at this point really can't just have this really good pitching prospect in Nolan McLean sitting in AAA and continue to run Paul Blackburn out there and not get at least a little bit of criticism for wondering, okay, when do you just call the kid up and, I mean, see if he can give you some good innings, 40-man roster spot, be damned, like make that move. So those are the type of things that I'll be talking about tomorrow once I have the time to dive into my research tonight. But I appreciate all of you again for tuning in live. And for those of you who catch the replays or listen to the show back, as always, thank you all. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube now, if you're watching later, hit that subscribe button. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day, not for your second watch. Check out Locked On Sports Today, which is streaming 24/7 on YouTube, giving you access to all of the top news around the games in sports. Check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube.